Hello everyone, welcome to today's Novedge webinar. Are you tired of struggling with PDM? Onshape shows you a better way. For the most part, file-based PDM systems have been successful in preventing big mistakes, but they're not without their pitfalls. In fact, an industry survey revealed that more than 7 out of 10 product development professionals wish there were a better way to prevent version control problems. Is there a better way? Well, this is what we're trying to establish today. In fact, soon our presenter, Mike LaFleche, also known as the professor, will tell you all about how to fix this problem. Mike is a fixture in the 3D CAD community, and he previously worked for multiple SolidWorks value-added resellers in training and sales. And let me tell you a little bit about Novedge. Novedge is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering more choices, more freedom, best advice, and faster service. So check us out at novedge.com, where you can find Onshape and related products. Now, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen so he can address you directly. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction, and I really am excited to show you, perhaps a better way. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But essentially, to understand why there might be a better way to do PDM or product data management, you got to understand what PDM is first. So we'll go through that. For many, many years, I was a CAD manager after leaving the world of SolidWorks as a SolidWorks implementer, where I implemented many PDM systems. Hundreds of companies I've visited over the years, helping them install and configure and maintain their PDM systems. I had some time to do that as both a reseller and as somebody working directly for a manufacturing company. I joined Onshape about 6 years ago because I was done with PDM. Really, it's a necessary evil many people consider PDM to be. And I'll go over the reasons why here, but we'll talk about PDM, what an installed CAD and PDM landscape typically look like. There's always exceptions, but from what I've seen in the hundreds of companies that I've worked with setting these systems up, I can share with you my experience there. We'll also discuss the Onshape platform capabilities. What drew me in to Onshape in the beginning was that I didn't have to do a lot of work to have the same level of capability, if not more capability, than what traditional PDM provided. And through this time, we'll go through a quick demonstration, and we'll leave some time for questions at the end. But we'll obviously make sure you know how to get started if you want to start a pilot project in Onshape. Partnering here with Novedge to purchase Onshape for them. So let's talk about PDM. What the heck is PDM? PDM stands for Product Data Management. PDM systems are typically built on top of your CAD system. So everybody uses a CAD system to do their design work and 3D mostly nowadays, whether you're using SolidWorks or Creo or Inventor. These are some of our contemporaries in the space, right, for running a CAD system. And those CAD systems are all kind of Windows centric. They have a Windows file system that they work through where they create lots and lots of files. And people that start needing PDM experience some pains that I'll get into later in this presentation that they require buying a PDM system for. But when people ask for a PDM system, they're really thinking about these things you see on the screen here. They're asking for a vaulted system, a secure vault where they can store their intellectual property, a place where you can reliably and hopefully easily get your data out, use it, share it with just the right people, okay? So that's a lot of people call their PDM systems a vault. In fact, the Autodesk system is actually called Vault. SolidWorks has one called SolidWorks Enterprise PDM, or they've changed the name of it a couple of times. But there's a number of PDM systems out there that I've had experience with, and I'm sure you guys have as well. The other thing people use PDM systems for is for searching for files and sorting them in a way that makes sense for their organization. So I'm looking for a part that's made of aluminum that it costs less than $5 and is called bracket, right? So you can do a search for that, or searching on a part number, right? So getting search results that are a little better than what you could do in a standard Windows folder system. That's what PDM typically helps with. It also allows for change control. Like usually with a workflow, like you'll see a big flow chart designed inside the software, and this is change control. So when something goes from production to, or from maybe work in progress to production, it has to go through a certain approval cycle with engineering change orders. Sometimes the PDM systems do this. Usually end up having to buy a PLM system, a product lifecycle management system, on top of the PDM in many cases to get the full benefit of the workflow, especially when sharing across different departments. So a lot of people have a small workflow in their PDM and a larger workflow in a separate PLM that they also have to purchase. And finally, PDM systems are beneficial because you can actually not only get a list of parts that a particular design might use, but you can also get a list of assemblies where a particular part might be used. The where used search is something that PDM and PLM systems, for that matter, help with, where the Windows file system does not make that something that's really possible, because you really need a database table behind the scenes to make all that happen. So that's what PDM systems kind of sell themselves on. They'll also sell themselves on collaboration, but I'm not putting that down on this slide because I feel that that's a lie. I'm going to call it out right now. Any PDM system that says they enable collaboration is kind of being disingenuous, and I'll get into the reasons why. I'll back this up a little bit. And like I said, I've implemented hundreds of companies on PDM. It's really interesting compared to what you're going to see with Onshape, of course. So I'm 100% guilty of selling Onshape or PDM as a collaborative tool back in the day when I didn't know any better. Okay, but I have learned. So when do companies decide to add PDM to the mix? I guarantee you, well, maybe I shouldn't say guarantee, but 90+% of the time when a company starts with a new CAD system, they're not clearly thinking ahead 5-10 years down the road with what they're going to do with all of the data that they have created, right? If you think about it, you buy your CAD system because you need to get your CAD designs for creating a product, a mouse, medical device, robotic system, machine design, right? You're thinking about the product because that's the immediate kind of feedback that you need to build. But if you don't think about the data management on day one, you're gonna lead yourself down a road where you're gonna start asking yourselves a lot of questions about where is the latest design, how many copies of this design are floating around, how do I share this securely with my supply chain. Once you start asking these questions, it's almost too late. You needed a PDM system. If you could have a PDM system from day one, I bet you would, but there's a lot of cost and infrastructure needs for a PDM, which I'll get into. But these are some of the questions, or times, I should say, when companies add PDM to the mix. When there's more than one user or more than two users on a project, right? So you're designing a machine, you're working on the assembly of the indexing mechanism or whatever. And you need to work in a way where you're not like overwriting each other's work by mistake, right? That's the time when people start to buy PDM systems to help their CAD and files work better together. Another instance is when people go multi-site. There's, you think of, extremely large companies like Boeing or Airbus or something like that as a multi-site company where manufacturing plants and engineering is done worldwide at different locations. But even the smallest of companies, I remember one of our first Onshape customers, they were a 3-engineer startup and they had 3 locations: Bay Area, Canada, and Boston. They were multi-site from day one. And that's the trend nowadays, right? Especially in the era of work from home, COVID, and the stuff that we have to go through now. Unfortunately, right? But multi-site is a fact of life now. There's always people from multiple places working on design data now. So using a Windows folder system is not a sustainable practice if you're working in a multi-site environment, because CAD files are very big. You need to replicate those files to each location to have performant access to the design data. Regulatory concerns are another reason why people buy a PDM system. So, if you have FDA requirements, or you have to go through audits, ISO certification, AS 9102, I think there's another one. There's a lot of different regulatory needs to show a proper audit trail. Who did what and when, is a question that if you're asking yourself, who did this change and why did they do it and when, that's another reason for buying PDM, the regulatory concerns. And as part of that, who did what and when, electronic sign-off and signature is sometimes part of that, where you want to see who approved a design through a workflow. That's where PDM starts helping you as well. Managing complex projects and reusable products, of course, you want to find where other parts you might be able to pull from other projects into your new design to save cost, right? I think I read one study, for every part number that you take out, in inventory, it costs, between 12 and 20,000 US dollars just for the management of that information. So if you can use less parts, more of the same parts across multiple projects, PDM is going to help you there, because it'll help you identify where other parts are being used. So I'll get into a demo of Onshape in a minute here, but if you take a look at this is the installed CAD and PDM landscape from a competitive package. This is not Onshape. This is another PDM system, okay? So if we look at this graphic, you can see a 3-site operation. Your main office, we'll call it San Francisco. Then we'll have, we'll call it, we'll pick different continents in this case. We'll pick Shenzhen, China, and we'll pick London, just for the heck of it, right? So we have these 3 places, and there's a lot of infrastructure that you need to set up when doing a PDM. Of course, you need a CAD workstation. You need a very fast local area network. You need to connect to the wide area network to go outside the firewall of your company, from San Francisco to China and to London. And these bold lines that you see right here that I'm kind of tracing over that connect to the WAN, those need to be very high speed connections because of the amount of data going back and forth, replicating all the time. And you need a special replication server at each of the sites where data is being pulled into or pushed from that connect to that WAN. Then the people at each site can access the data. Okay, a lot to think about, right? This looks pretty expensive. it is expensive. I know. I've spec'd out a lot of different, systems over the year to set these up, from very basic setups to very elaborate setups with 60 or more sites. But if you look at this drafting room, I love this image because it tells a nice story. This drafting room, really isn't any different than what we're doing here, okay? There's, a database server and archive servers. These archive servers, think of these as filing cabinets, right? These archive servers are where all the files are being stored in these filing cabinets. If we go back again to the previous slide, we have a database server. The database server might be a logbook that one of the administrators is holding on to. You can see the administrators in the front of the room kind of keeping guard over the files in those drawers that you see right there. And when an engineer wants to take a drawing out, they go to the administrator notes who it is, they take the file out of the drawer, and they make a copy of it on a blueprint machine immediately. And then the engineer works in the original, and they take their power eraser. You can see the Alvin tape dots and the brush right here for brushing off the erasures, coffee cup on the table and everything, right? It's it's kind of fun to see. I'm actually old enough to remember working, starting my days in this space. But if you think about this room and this right here, when we went through phase 1 of digital transformation with CAD and PDM systems, all we did was really duplicate this file folder based process that you see on this screen right here, okay? And that was fine as a step 1, but we have better technology now. We have database driven CAD systems like Onshape that don't even require you to take a file out of the file drawer. You can even have people essentially working all together on the same drafting board on a top level assembly together because of our database driven nature. A PDM system is a glorified file copy machine. It's essentially duplicating this entire process. So let's talk about how the PDM systems work, and then I'll show you how Onshape works. So here we have this kind of globe here showing the different, here's Shenzhen, here's London, here's San Francisco. Got a couple of other sites here where manufacturing might be done, in Boston and maybe Brazil or something down in India here. So let's talk about how they work. So at the main site in San Francisco, you would have to have a database, Microsoft SQL database. So if you bought PDM system today, it depends which one you buy, but chances are you're going to have some sort of Microsoft SQL licensing setup, which is not cheap, okay? There are certain systems that come with a miniature version of the SQL database, but if you're a larger company with multiple sites, even if you're not larger, if you have multiple sites, you're going to need a higher end database software that you're going to have to buy from Microsoft. If I open up a link here, here's a link from one of the local SolidWorks partners that talks about the end of life for a certain SQL type of license that they used to provide. Now they're not, right? So, there are things you have to stay up on to, to start to implement these systems. Typically, you're talking to experts like myself, and hiring people out like me at, typically $2,000 or $3,000 US per day to help get these systems set up. You also need a database server. So you need physical hardware, database server, archive server, web server. Now, in the last 10 years, people are going to virtualization for a lot of this stuff, which some PDM systems support and some don't. But you can run these in virtualized environments at your site or hosted on a cloud site. But hosting these systems on a cloud service ends up being, there's a lot of lag time involved because of the huge files going back and forth. So just keep that in mind if you want to go with a cloud-based version of something that was designed for locally installed hardware. It's typically not going to be a pleasant working experience because of the speed problems that can occur. Let's see if I can get my mouse back. So you have your hardware. You need at least 3 servers, whether virtual or not. You need at least a gigabit networking switch. You need CAD workstations, which are at least $3,000 US. I mean, you can get away with lesser stuff if you're making smaller designs, but if you're doing machine design, you're going to spend money on a high-end CAD workstation. Windows only, of course. And networking. A lot of people forget about the networking piece, but this could be the most expensive part of the equation. Depending on what speed you need to connect to these other database and archive locations around the world, you might need, well, of course you need to, go through the firewall with VPN and stuff, but you'll probably end up needing a leased line or an MPLS line from AT&T or Verizon or something like that to kind of reserve bandwidth from your main site to the extended sites. This is on the order of at least $1,000 a month for maybe 300 megabit, bandwidth access. If you want or need more, you're going to spend more. So this is a big cost, the networking lines that you have to lease from the major telecom suppliers when using a PDM system. It's probably the biggest cost, unless you're thinking about the opportunity costs of having to run a PDM and the blockers that it causes. So I'll talk about that when we get into the demo. And just to reiterate, the other sites will also need servers. You'll need an archive server at each extended work location site. Those servers have to be cared for and monitored like you have to be like a hawk watching these things. My last job before joining Onshape as a CAD manager for a global aerospace and oil and gas company, I had to spend the first 2 hours of my morning every day over coffee, opening up all of these servers around the world and checking to make sure they weren't running out of disk space after the replication cycle happened. Because if they ran out of space while the replication happened overnight, those servers would go down and all the engineers would go down and they would not be able to get their work done. I have a couple of experiences I'm not going to share now completely, but it's not good when you get a call from the executive at one of the sites saying that we have to send every single one of our engineers home because your server ran out of space. But this could happen in an instant because the files are so big. If you don't allocate your hard disk space properly, it's you're going to get these issues. And that's just one small issue that could pop up. I'm exhausted thinking about it. I got to get out of this mindset now. So let me get reset here. Other sites need stuff as well. So you need to make sure you install servers, you're monitoring these servers, you have the proper equipment as well. So this is a large cost. I'm not going to hand calculate it out for you because it's going to be different for every company. But just the infrastructure for PDM is enough to make you have to think twice about going in that direction. And there hasn't been really any other choice. It has been a necessary evil until Onshape came along. So with PDM systems, these PDM systems are sharing data by sharing copies of files. And we ran a previous webcast here with Novedge talking about the evils of files floating around and having copies of files all over the place. Copies of files and management of files is almost half of the day for an engineer to figure out their design process. So when you're doing design work, ask yourself, how much time am I taking browsing for files, managing copies of files, doing pack and go, doing file check-in and check-out operations, waiting for a synchronization to happen if it hasn't happened automatically, waiting for a file to come down from the PDM system to my local computer, opening the CAD system itself. Like if you can read the file path references while your files are opening, that probably means it's too slow, right? And a lot of these things might be out of your control as an engineer. And then you start working with your IT people and reseller who you bought the CAD and PDM from to try to figure out how to make it faster. And it takes a lot of work. And the reseller isn't going to be able to sign into your PDM very easily, by the way, either, to get information and logs. So with a PDM, data is shared by copying files back and forth. And when you open something out of PDM, you get to check it out, which means you lock it from anybody else making a change. Other people can look at the things read only or take a copy of things, which would be the worst thing you could do because then you don't have any way of merging changes back together. So essentially, as you can see, just to reiterate, a PDM system just duplicated that process of taking a file out of a drawer on the server in this case, copying the file to the local engineer's desktop, the drafting board over here, and they make their changes and then you put them back into the vault. Okay, that's all a PDM system's doing. I mean, at the core, there's workflow and other fancy bells and whistles, of course, but this is fundamentally what's happening. And there's a database that's the overlord of everything, watching and recording everything that's going on. And people are like, oh, well, why don't I just move that to the cloud? I'll put my PDM server and all my infrastructure hosted on AWS or Azure or something like that. It's the same thing. Still have all the file copies. In fact, it makes the problem worse for the engineer. It makes the IT guy's life easier because they've just, smacked their hands and they're like, okay, I nothing to do here now. I'm good. So the IT guys put it on the cloud, which I commend them for because it's an efficiency. It's a way of saving cost and money. Electric bills and server rooms are pretty expensive. But the end engineers don't get any benefit whatsoever because their life is actually worse because the file copy time is slower because they have to go to the higher latency of a cloud file exchange. Okay. And when Onshape put itself together, we decided that this wasn't going to be a tenable situation. So I'll explain how we did it. But let's reiterate the challenges to concurrent design a PDM system gives you as a company. Because of the checkout based process, only one person at a time can work on a file. And that's not, PDM and a normal Windows file system is going to be the same thing, right? You can only have one person in any file at a time. But PDM does not make that better. It tracks it better for sure and helps you from overwriting files usually. But it certainly doesn't help you design faster. It's actually going to kind of get in the way a little bit. If somebody forgets to check in their file before going home for the weekend, or, then the other people, the other stakeholders who need parts of that design the engineer had and updated aren't going to get them. The other thing, a lot of people don't use their PDM system that they paid lots of money for to its fullest extent. One prime example that I hear every single day just about is people don't check in their files every day. They'll check in their files maybe at the end of the week, end of the month, end of a project. So if you have like a 6-month project, there are people that are just saving those files on their local computer because it's faster. And then they wait to check in the data in the vault, where it's almost inaccessible, right? And they just do it at the end to have a check mark of, okay, we have a backed up copy of our design up on the vault, but I still have all these copies on my local hard drive. That's what happens with PDM systems. Dirty secrets revealed, an expose, right? So with Onshape, we decided that we had to change this. And the only way we could change this was to build a new company, clean sheet of paper called Onshape. We decided to actually do this correctly. We had to build a new CAD system with data management sewn in at the very core of existence of the system. So from day one, if you're using Onshape, you have version control and data management. There is no local file in the cloud to worry about. There's no local file on your hard drive to worry about. Everything's centrally managed on perfectly set up, data center type equipment that you don't have to ever worry about. So you're getting the benefits of cloud and moving to things like Azure and AWS and such, but you don't have to think about that bill or anything. Onshape takes care of all that. All you have to do is just buy the number of users you need to access the system. There's no limit on storage. You can use it as much as you want. You can share with people across the supply chain. No VPNs, no MPLS leased lines from your telecom providers. You don't need to worry about servers, electric bills, backups. All you have to do is think about your design, because the data management is built in at the core. So, to do this, though, we had to build a new CAD system to actually do it. So we have a CAD, like you're used to. It creates parts, assemblies, and drawings, and kind of, has the, the language of the everyday engineer taken into consideration. But we also included the data management at the core. So every user of Onshape gets version control from day one. That's fully hosted. Every single change is recorded. You can go back, view, compare, and restore. You can even branch off of different design ideas to explore and iterate. This is very similar to like GitHub and stuff, where you can create design branches if you're doing software code and things like that. But it's just built in at the core. So it's kind of even better than GitHub, because you're not managing code snippets and uploading them to a repository. Everything's happening on the fly. So it's really an elegant solution for managing your data. The most elegant I think I've seen personally. And it's just the moment I saw Onshape and got wind of it, I quit my job and joined Onshape. That's how strongly I felt about this, because I just know how much of my life I've wasted installing software, managing services, servers. I hate to think about how many hours of my life I've spent on that. It's years, years of life I've spent installing and configuring and maintaining software. And with Onshape, there's zero of that. I have nothing to manage whatsoever. Okay. Just need to work on designs and doing designs the right way, right? But because we've moved this to a software as a service type solution where you don't have to worry about those things, there are other benefits now that you can kind of pile on with this unfair advantage that we have now, right? There's communication tools built in, Google Docs style communication tools where you can see other people in a document and even work together at the same time, right? Have design reviews, comments built right in to the designs and markups. Design review tools called the follow mode. I'll try to show that. And view-only users don't need to install fancy separate viewer software. It just, the CAD system becomes a viewer for people that only have read-only rights to the design. So that's something that you get for being on SaaS and on Onshape. And, if you're Onshape Professional or Enterprise, so there's 3 levels of Onshape: Standard, Pro, and Enterprise. Standard's like for your single person consultant, but if you're on Pro or Enterprise, you get business process definition through workflows. Onshape Professional comes with a default workflow that works for almost any situation you can think of. And for companies that have more complex requirements, the Onshape Enterprise system allows you to design custom workflows with customized forms. So you can see here, I have a form here showing an obsolescence of a design for this LCD. And, there needs to be data collected during that process, an engineering change process, right? This also works on mobile. So you can access Onshape from any modern device. I'm running a MacBook. People run Chromebooks with Onshape. Of course, Windows platforms are supported, but iPad, iPhone, Android devices, there's an app in each app store for, installing an Onshape app on Android or iOS. And really, it's just the data, the touch layer, so you can use your finger. Everything else is, on the cloud, so it's a tiny install. But on your computer, you just go to cad.onshape.com or whatever. If you're using an enterprise, you get your own special domain. So let's just hop into it and show you how this kind of works, going from the, this type of workflow to more of a stacked workflow, okay? So let's hop out of this. I have Onshape here on my MacBook. You can see I have the Mac right here. I have a Chrome browser loaded up here. And I'm in this design for a throttle system, right? Let me just hide this for a second, hide that for a second, make the design the hero here. And, this is a CAD system, right? I have, if I move this, it's going to open and close the inlets, right here for the throttle, right? And that's a piece of sheet metal. These are machined parts. This is a casting with a machining operation. I have some trumpets here. Depending on what you're looking for, you might want to have small, medium, or large trumpets that are configurable. Onshape has variant-driven design that makes it easy to do what I'm doing here. Maybe I want to use different types of spark plugs. I might decide to install some Bosch spark plugs, so I'll design those in a moment. But I have the Beck ones right here. So the CAD system is all here, but the data management is built in on the side panel. So the side panel shows me all of the changes that have been happening. You notice even like rotating the throttle, port open, it recorded that as an action. 2:34 p.m. here in Boston, I did that. Every single change here, even when the system doesn't update. So every 3 weeks, as you can see, we have an update. If I hover over this enough, you'll get the point. It records that. You can even branch off to try out different design ideas. And this is something that PDM systems struggle with. If you do a file copy save as, or a pack and go, or copy tree, each CAD system calls it something different. You kind of lose the history of what that design branch iteration does, but in Onshape you don't. You see that history, and you can even merge the history into the main branch right here. The other benefit of having PDM for most companies is the where used report. So here I am on my main Onshape page where I sign in as a named user right here. Here is Mike the manager, right? And that's what Mike the manager has access to. Maybe Mike is interested in looking for a the Bosch fuel injector, right? So he's just doing a search in the system for the word Bosch, and there it is, the Bosch fuel injector. He can see where it is. He can open it. There's also great information that you can get. A lot of PDM systems offer this thing called a data card, or the item master information. So here, that's what I'm seeing. I can actually click on the fuel injector, see it's an assembly, see the revision, date of it. It's in progress. It's not released yet. Here's the revision history. There is no history because it wasn't released. Here's where it might be used. It's not used anywhere. I know the Beck one was in use though, right? So if I search for the Beck fuel injector, actually I already did right here, I can get that report right here on the side. And I can look, at any place where I've released it. So I have a Beck fuel injector that was released under ECO 225, and it's used in this assembly, and I can open that directly from the CAD and data manager view and into, this right here. So it looks like I opened the assembly itself, but I already know it's actually used here as well. But I can also do the reverse here as well. I can see, where else this fuel injector might be used from the CAD system, right? So if I just click here, there's the revision history, there's the where used, and I can run that where used in another way. And this is showing me all the versions and all the places where that fuel injector might be used. Maybe I only want to look at revised data, and I haven't used any revised items, only versions so far. So really pretty interesting that you can get this right at your fingertips without leaving the CAD system. The triangles here show you the state of the design that we're using right here. Let's actually go in and look at the revision history this way. No revisions on that. Let's do this one. Nothing on that, I guess, either. I'm picking the wrong ones, I guess, but that's okay. I'm going to show you how to create a revision in a second. So next thing I'm going to do is I want to go to that, not the Beck fuel injector, but the Bosch fuel injector, because I want to add it to that design to have two choices of fuel injectors. So I'll open it up. And this particular document, I have the Bosch fuel injector assembly ready to go, and I just want to get this approved and blessed for production, right? So here it is. It's 2 parts just like that. These are the parts that make it up. So let's release this. And I can see here's the top level assembly for that fuel injector. It's going to go at Rev A, ready for use. The 2 items underneath it, the little O-ring and then the body of the fuel injector, these are not revision managed. I've set that up so that, you know, when you buy this from Bosch, you're buying the whole unit. You're not buying the sub components that make it up. So I just block it from doing the revision management for that. And that's something you can turn on in Onshape. And I'm just going to release this under some sort of change order number. I'm going to pick a number. You might have a system for this, but I'm just giving it an ECO number, and I want it to be approved by somebody on my team, right? I can give it to maybe Debbie, the designer, to approve this. She might be somebody who approves library parts. And I want to let the purchasing agent know, or the whole team of purchasing agents know, that this is happening. And I'll submit it for review. And it will tell you, that's being processed. This is the change management process. We're going to see in the timeline view that ECO has an open triangle that this is being worked on. Over here, Debbie, this is her window, and she's going to look at release actions, newest first. There it is, the fuel injector's pending. And she can view that release. She can click into here and make sure it's the right thing, of course, right? Just click on into it. So yeah, both windows, multi-window system. She can look at this, she can see it in a view-only state. She might want to do a measurement, to make sure it's the right size, right? So she'll pick these 2 things, hit this tape measure, and there's the distance right there, right? She can do section views right here, see what's going on. It's just a simplified model, so there's nothing inside of it. It's just that way from the vendor. They sent us a step file probably, right? And this looks good, Debbie. So she's gonna, add a comment to Mike, the manager. Looks good to me. Make sure the label is applied to the side. And I can even tag where the label should be, and even do a screenshot if I really wanted to. That's importing one, but let's draw one on the fly. Label here, right? And I can add that to the comment, right? So it shows Mike what's going on. Mike will get a notification in here in just a second that comment has come through, or I know it's happening now, so I'll just hop right into it. And there it is. There's the comment in the ECO. And I can say sure thing. That's all happening as part of the ECO process, and I can resolve that comment, right? Now Debbie is going to go in right here and approve it. So she goes to her approval, and she hits the release button, and immediately I can see it's entered the release date on Mike's screen. If I look at the timeline view, it's right here, ECO 19, whatever it is. And I can go to the assembly here, where I want to place it. I have a configuration kind of set up waiting for this Bosch model to be added. Now I can insert my recently released assembly for the fuel injector. So I know that it's made by a certain supplier, and I know it's Bosch. That metadata is already in the document. So I'm just searching my entire Onshape system for an assembly with Bosch in it. Well, maybe I didn't put it in there. I'll just search by name in this case. There it is. And I'll use the released one, of course, right? Rev A, drop it in here. So the CAD and the PDM are one, right? I'm just going to stick this in. I'm not exactly sure how it sets in here, but I'll just put it in right here and rotate it about. do it so it's coming in like that. It looks like a little interference there. Might need to fix that. I guess that's why I not working in engineering anymore. Let me just fix this. There's that mate. I'll just slide it back out again. Once I do it once the right way, it'll be easier to do the next one because of something really cool that we have. All right, good enough for now. I just want to replicate. So a little bit of CAD, right? And I replicate the fuel injector somewhere else on the design right here. I actually picked the wrong edge, so sorry. First day with my new hand, guys. I'll just put it in here. Perfect right there. Perfect right here. And we'll rotate it so the wiring comes into the inside, like that, right? And of course, my bill of materials is right here and up to date. So a lot of PDM systems have a bill of materials. So I'm getting the structured bill of materials view of this. There's my Bosch fuel injector showing up in the BOM. But if I switch this to the Beck one, you're going to see the Beck fuel injector. And of course, I can configure, whether I'm using the Beck or the Bosch fuel injectors in here as well. So I haven't done that just yet, but I could do that if I spent a few more minutes on this. Very, very easy to do advanced configuration, control, and management here. It was almost like child's play. You didn't have to go to other systems and other windows to do this. It's all inexorably kind of linked in here. There is no separating the CAD and PDM with Onshape. It's all the same, right? So this is really the main definition of what's happening here is everything's hosted for you. You don't have to worry at all about this. So, and I didn't, I showed you how both Debbie and Mike were working on the design together. They could literally be in that same assembly and that same throttle, adding parts together. Debbie working on one part of it, Mike adding more parts. Everything's just going to be up to date, real time. And then the ability to use this release management workflow is really key. You get to define that as an administrator in the system, right? So, here's the release management, and you can define the way you want your workflow to happen, right? It's all just something you can define right here. How your revisions happen, how your part numbers happen, what the conditions and rules are. So you're controlling that right from the Onshape system as an administrator. You don't have to go to some separate tool to do that. It's all cloud-based management of that as well. All right. So you have seen a very short demonstration. Of course, if you have more questions, there's, we'd be happy to help. But if you have any questions, think of them now while I wrap up the slide portion of it, and then we can open it up to any questions that do appear. But if you look at this, the value of a CAD or a SaaS platform, hopefully you've seen it, right? You can really transform the way you work with this system, right? The way Onshape works, it kind of liberates you from having that old drafting room mentality with your PDM system. So you can do this more real-time kind of problem solving no matter where you are in the world. All you need is a very light and basic internet connection to access it. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. The bigger the assembly, the more internet you would want. But, when I say big assembly, I'm talking, thousands of parts, so for most people, that's probably 10 or 15% of the market makes assemblies bigger than 1,000+ parts. And Onshape can certainly support that. Non-blocking release management. So people can continue to work on their designs even after a release candidate is proposed. You might even propose 2 or 3 release candidates, and 1 or 2 of them may win, and the other one will be discarded because it might not be the right time, or it might be a bad idea. Who knows? But you can see that and branch off and try out these different design ideas without blocking the release process. All other PDM systems that I know of, once you submit a part for approval, that's it. That file's locked. You can't do anything else to it. You can't initiate more than one workflow process. It's kind of locked up from there. You saw how easy it was to share with Debbie, but I could also just as easily share with my supply chain partners, my customers, my vendors, to also work with me in the world of Onshape just by inviting them into the system. Of course, you have to have a license and stuff, but that's it's just a matter of buying it and you have it. And this whole time, zero IT tax, right? You saw all the stuff you have to think about with a PDM system, and you have to deploy and set up and maintain and pay somebody who's an expert to set this up, right? It's typically, on a first install of PDM between 5 and 10 days of implementation services that you will need at $2,000 or $3,000 US per day from somebody that knows what you're doing. If you choose not to have an expert come in and do it, you're going to do it yourself, and it'll take 6 months to a year, most likely. Not saying that just because I used to be a PDM implementation specialist. It's just I've seen that happen time and time again. You get busy, you got design work to do, and that takes precedent over configuring and maintaining a PDM system, right? So it's something I just don't have to have that uncomfortable conversation anymore with people when I talk about Onshape, right? Let's see. I think that's really where I wanted to leave it off. Of course, you can just go right to novedge.com here and search for Onshape, and you have the subscriptions available. The easiest way to understand Onshape is just to buy a few subscriptions to try it out. It's not, as you can see, the highest end package is $3,000 a user, so it's a very small cost to get a full experience of understanding it. And I highly recommend the training. Novedge offers the training as well, which is conducted by Onshape certified professionals here at headquarters at PTC. And you can buy that training here for release management. You would obviously want that one if you're interested in PDM. And of course, you'd want the boot camp if you were somebody that was involved in CAD in general. So it's all right there. It's very easy to get into and understand. We're here to help. The Onshape support team is built in to the CAD system itself. Contact support's right here, and you're going to get a hold of somebody. And it's all real time, and people can jump in the document with you if you give us permission, and we can help you right away. So I think that's where I really want to leave it, Barbara. So
thank you, Mike. Yes, as Mike said, just type in your questions if you have them now. What a riveting presentation. And you guys are very lucky because you cannot have found a better spokesperson. Mike certainly knows what he's talking about. I'm still looking to see if we receive question. In the meantime, I'm trying to share my screen.
Sure, let me stop. There you go.
Okay. Just to show you again what you can find Onshape. And I want to remind you that this webinar has been recorded. So if you watch it after the fact, you can, and if you have questions, you can always call us at Novedge. Our phone number can be found at the top of every page, every product page as our phone number. So it's easy to find. Give us a call, we'll hook you up. And no question. That was fantastic, Mike. Thanks again for your time today, and looking forward to another webinar. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.